Hey everyone, Blake Lovell, Southeastern 14, back here with more SEC basketball transfer notes in the off season. We haven't done these in a little bit, but of course Max is joining me now, so we've got some pretty fun basketball stuff coming up next week here on the channel. So be sure to hit that subscribe button. We've got our power rankings, our early power rankings for the upcoming season. We've also got some reaction to Antonio Reeves returning to Kentucky and some other notes as well. So be sure to hit that subscribe button for more of our SEC basketball stuff, in addition to all of our SEC football and baseball stuff. But let's talk about the Hogs. Yes, the Must Bus continues to roll right along in the transfer portal. They finally fill their final roster spot here with Chandler Lawson from Memphis joining the crew there. I mean, honestly, joining many other transfers we've already talked about this offseason there for the Hogs, as they've added a lot of other talent to the mix. They've got some guys back, but Chandler Lawson now joins the mix from Memphis, a 6'8", guy, long type forward. I think he's got a 6'7", 7'7" wingspan. So a long forward that I think will be able to help them in a variety of ways. He averaged 5 points per game last season at Memphis, 4.5 rebounds, shot 57-ish%, I think, from the floor. A lot of that, again, was probably on some pretty easy looks at the rim, whether that's dunks or things like that. But he played about 20 minutes a game. So he was a important player, I think, to that rotation for Memphis. And so now I think that's kind of how you probably view him heading into this role at Arkansas. Is he's going to be an important part of the front court rotation, and I think it gives him more depth when you consider that you do have Trevin Brazil returning. You've got Makai Mitchell returning. You add Bayfall. We've talked about kind of, I know the reaction as we were going through kind of looking at the transfers this offseason for Arkansas. A lot of the comments were, yes, this is great. We got another guard. Like, can we get a little more depth in the front court? We've added the shooting. We've added sort of the backcourt pieces to the mix. Of course, getting Devo Davis back was a big part of that when you consider the guys that they were adding around. But I know everyone was talking about, can we just get more of that depth in the front court? I think Lawson will give them some of that. Again, just the length that he has. We always talk about versatile players. He feels like someone that will be able to help them on both sides of the floor, depending on how, they choose to use him, whether it is someone like this who can run the floor. And I think that's something I wanted to point out is, we talk about tempo, right? And the style of play. Memphis, if you watch them, that Penny Hardaway likes to play an up-tempo style. And so they were top 25 in tempo last season. They were top 25 in average offensive possession length. So that was a team that really, got up and down the floor. They could get out in transition. And you guys know, too, if, watching the SEC and those kind of things now, coaches like to have their big men who can, get up and down the floor. They like to be able to run the floor. And that's where you can hit those kind of guys for, easy layups and transitions, easy dunks, and also on the defensive side of the floor, having a guy like that who can get back, and chase down someone who is, running the floor, trying to get an open look. And so I think that's where you kind of have it, someone like Chandler Lawson who can help them do that on both sides of the floor. Started 24 games last season for Memphis. And a former 4-star recruit. He started his career at Oregon initially, but goes to Memphis, carved out a role there for himself. And again, I think just adding another piece to the puzzle in the forward slash center type spot, I think that just gives you a lot of options now to work with if you're Eric Musselman, knowing kind of what the expectations are for the guys that are returning. And now when you add him to the mix, I think it just makes a lot of sense when you consider, again, what you have around him. And that was really the big focus this offseason when we looked at it, was talking about this sort of revamped backcourt overall. Really a lot of new faces in the backcourt. We know that now. And then when you think about, the guys like Tremont Mark, who we've talked about, I very high on him, someone who I think will be able to play a lot of different roles for this team. And all the other guys they've added to the mix, Khalif Battle, Jeremiah Davenport, L. Ellis, we talked about him and kind of what he brings from a scoring standpoint at the guard position. And so when you fill out the entire roster, the questions with Arkansas was just going to be a matter of who came back. And that was, as you guys know, that was a big topic of conversation this summer, was trying to figure out who was going to come back. And that would kind of give you a much better idea of what the roster would be. And now that that, now that Davis came back, now that Makai Mitchell came back, Brazil, and so forth, you now have a clear picture. And I think that's where you can really start, with this final spot on the roster, which again, we all understand the whole Grant Nelson thing. That was one that obviously came down to Arkansas and Alabama. I think it's very clear now with the addition of Chandler Lawson, probably what Grant Nelson is going to do, even though that's not been made official. I think it's very obvious at this point what the next step is for that. And so, yeah, I mean, it's just looking at this roster overall, and we will talk about that when Max and I do our power rankings next week. Is just to look at kind of where this puts Arkansas now that we see their final roster, and we see pretty much final rosters all around the SEC. Maybe there's a couple teams. There's still a guy or two out there that have still yet to be determined. But I think when you look at Arkansas right now, you guys will not be surprised that to see where I have Arkansas next week when we do our power rankings, because I think when you just look at all the talent they brought in, and most importantly, it's not just talent; it's guys who really fit a certain role on this team, and you can kind of see what that role is pretty much going to be based on their skill set and what Muss was specifically targeting in some of these guys. And we've talked about the added shooting, which has always been a hot topic. I think when we have our conversations during the season, you guys have certainly talked about the shooting ability, needing a team that can shoot the ball better from outside. I think they've added that. You need kind of a lot of different options. You have those breakout type players now with Brazil, who many people expect to be a high draft pick next season. You've got, again, guy like Tremont Mark, who I'm going to keep bringing up because I just think he is someone that fits perfectly with kind of what they need to do to be successful this upcoming season, and just all the different things that he can kind of do as a defender, as someone who can score the ball. And so you add all the other pieces around them, and we're not going to get into everybody right now because we've already done it in the other videos we've done here this offseason. But you really start to see that this is once again a team with the return of Devo Davis. Just it's an invaluable return, because you just think of all the things that he brings to the table. And so you really start to look at it and you see a team that I think is certainly going to have a really good chance to challenge for the SEC title next season, and again potentially make it into that second weekend of the NCAA tournament for a fourth straight season. That is pretty wild to think about. Back-to-back Elite Eights, a Sweet 16, and now aiming for a fourth straight appearance in the second weekend or beyond of the NCAA tournament. So Hogs add Chandler Lawson, and another pickup for the Muss Bus in the transfer portal. As I always say, if you ever have any questions about the transfer portal, players that Muss brings in, you're giving him the benefit of the doubt at this point, because he has a proven track record of success when it comes to finding the right player for what he needs on the roster. And I think Chandler Lawson certainly gives them that with what he can do with the size, just the overall length and his ability to affect the game, I think, on both sides of the floor. So there you go. There's some thoughts on Chandler Lawson to Arkansas. All of our SEC basketball stuff this offseason you can find here on the channel. Go to the SEC basketball playlist. You can find all the stuff we've done on transfers. And again, Max and I will have our power rankings next week, and a lot more fun stuff to come with football and baseball as well. So appreciate you guys as always for watching, and we'll talk to you again here soon at Southeastern 14.